Hello and welcome back to another episode of DLC. My name is Joey Fitz, and today we are covering the game Seafarer, a ship simulator, which is a first-person maritime simulation game focusing on operating, maintaining, and basically surviving life aboard a working ship. Now, before we get into the episode, as always, I'd like to thank our friends over at Game.Press and the developers Astragon Development and Astragon Entertainment for the free review copy of the game. It's very much appreciated. Now let's get into it. While playing Seafarer the ship sim, you'll be handling navigation, engine management and the general upkeep while travelling across open water. On paper, it's the kind of game that should really appeal to fans that love a detailed, immersive sim. The core idea is immersion through routine. You're meant to feel like you're part of a working vessel, dealing with the day-to-day responsibilities and keeping it running. And to be fair to the game, it really does achieve that to an extent. There's a certain satisfaction between learning the systems and understanding how everything in the ship connects. The issue is that once you do understand it, I didn't feel that the game particularly evolved much beyond that. You'll spend most of your time interacting with the engine, the controls and the onboard systems and making sure everything is running smoothly. Early on, it's pretty engaging. There's a pretty good learning curve and figuring things out feels rewarding. There was a point where I thought that I'd messed up by going into the engine settings a bit too confidently, thinking that I'd figured it out. This is when all the alarms went off, the ship started slowing down, and I'm just staring at the controls like, what on earth have I done wrong here? The initial chaos is fun, and it makes these systems feel meaningful. Now, this is where things start to fall off a little bit. The problem with the game, for me, was the amount of variation in objectives. The gameplay loop boiled down to three things: travel somewhere, maintain the ship, repeat. And that in itself got pretty repetitive very quickly. So after a couple of runs, I had this moment where I realised I was doing basically the same thing over and over again, and the same journey with not a lot of twist or variety of tasks. And that's when it stopped feeling immersive and started feeling a bit more like a job. Things do occasionally go wrong, and those moments are pretty interesting and part of the game, but they're not as frequent or varied enough to carry the game in the long term. Inside the ship, things are really solid. Clear, readable control panels, functional, believable environments, and equipment that makes sense within the context. Out at sea, you've got waves and dynamic lighting, you've got changing weather conditions and a nice sense of scale and isolation. The visual style works well enough, but it's not particularly striking. It definitely feels like an indie sim, which at the moment there are a million a penny. There are some slightly stiff animations, slightly clunky AI, but nothing that elevates the game beyond serviceable. It supports the gameplay, but it doesn't give a lot of personality on top. So the things I think that work well in Seafarer as ship sim: the ship mechanics were pretty engaging and felt fairly authentic for someone who's never done the job. It had an immersive foundation, and it genuinely felt like I was managing a vessel. And the pace at first was relaxing. It felt like I had control of the ship, but I wasn't having my hand held throughout it. Unfortunately, the game stumbles pretty hard. Repetitive objectives are the biggest problem. This is something that the developer could work out longer term, but in the version I have to play right now, there just isn't a lot here. Limited progression is also another problem. Once you've learnt the systems, there's not a lot more to discover. And then finally, it's definitely a simulator, and it looks like one of these simulator games that you find on Steam. I guess my verdict is that Seafarer Ship Sim has a pretty strong foundation. Things are clear, the systems are solid, and the first few times it's quite fun to take the boat out onto the open water. but it struggles to build upon that foundation. The lack of objective variety and progression means the experience feels really repetitive much sooner than I feel like a game like this should. It's one of those games where the first hour is probably the most interesting because you're learning and experimenting, but after that you question how much you're actually going to enjoy repeating that same loop. It might be for some players. Unfortunately, in its current state, I don't think there is enough beyond the first hour, maybe 90 minutes to enjoy here. That's been my review on Seafarer the Ship Sim. Once again, thank you to our friends over at Game.Press and the developer Astragon Development. The game released on Steam on the 7th of October 2025 and you can find it on Steam. I've been Joey Fitz. Make sure you check out our Discord, Twitter and all other socials. God bless and have a great day.